All right, everybody, thanks for joining us this week. We are ready to go with our weekly Senate and House Democratic Leadership event. I'll turn over to Speaker Jenkins for some opening remarks, and we'll be happy to take your questions. So Speaker Jenkins, go right ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Just to briefly, we're starting our third week of session, and I'm glad to be here with House Majority Leader Pat Sullivan and Senators Dingra and Leas. I think we've started off moving really quickly and recognizing that this is a short session and we've got a lot of important issues to address. Last week, the House was able to move two bills related to the Washington CARES Act off the floor of the House. And with really broad positive bipartisan support, sending them over to the Senate, and we're hopeful that they'll be warmly received in the Senate and be able to move those forward and help Washingtonians across the state. I noticed just last week and yesterday there was quite a lengthy article in the Seattle Times about the need for the CARES Act and why Washingtonians so badly need support to try and help make sure that they're a family, that they have availability for long-term care. And I think Crosscut also had a really good article on this. Again, we're trying to make sure that people don't have to spend themselves into poverty to get the care that they need as they grow older. And I think these two bills will continue to help us move forward and perfect the approach that we take here in Washington State. And I'm excited about our ability to move forward quickly on these.
Good afternoon. And I'll just add that, Washington has been leading the nation in so many different issues over the last few years. And this session is really about making sure that we are perfecting those laws, those bills, making tweaks as needed, and really making sure we're doing all we can to make sure Washingtonians continue to thrive in our great state.
Great. And we'll open it up for questions and start with Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel, go right ahead.
For the speaker, going back to the CARES Act, because of the concerns, though, about the solvency of the measure based on the current tax rate, is there any discussion of looking at other funding streams to ensure that the program does what it's supposed to do at the level of benefits that have been promised without having to jump the tax rate?
Well, so Rachel, I think that the issues that have been raised around solvency are maybe not so well taken. I mean, what the actuaries have actually said is that it is solvent for at least 50 years, I think, as is now.
75 years.
Pardon?
I think it's 75 years at the current funding level, assuming nothing changes. But then the benefits drop 71% following that.
And so, right, the issue is that we will have a lot of time to figure out how we move forward with the CARES Act. The most important thing is that we be able to start getting benefits to people as soon as possible, so we don't have this issue about people not being able to get care until they can go on Medicaid, which means they've had to spend all of their assets to do it. We'll certainly look at that kind of solvency issue, but every single kind of entitlement that we pass here in Washington State, or that's done nationally, there are always projections that are done about long-term solvency, and you work on those through the course of the program being in effect. But we knew from the very beginning that it was projected to be solvent for at least 75 years, and so we'll keep on working on this as time goes, but this is not the most urgent issue right now. The most urgent issue is to start getting people benefits.
But again, just to be clear, do you think the employee only contribution is the best way to address it, or do you think that there's now a need to look at other potential funding streams?
I don't right now. I think that what's most important is that we start getting people benefits as quickly as we can.
Rachel, do you have a follow-up?
Just on a separate topic, the sales tax bill, that's a tax break bill that's been put forth by Senator Doss. I'm just curious, how likely are we to see a tax cut like that incorporated in either the House or Senate budget proposals? Do you guys have thoughts on that at this point?
I'm happy to chip in here. There have been a lot of tax relief bills that have been submitted both by Democrats and by Republicans, and we'll sort through all of those. A lot of what you're seeing in available funds for the budget are one-time. A majority of them are one-time. So we got to be really cautious about, what are the impacts both for the one-time bills that just affect one-time relief versus those that are ongoing. So we'll sort through those bills as we move forward.
And I'll just add to that, the giving back through the sales tax, that's one proposal on how we give back or invest in Washingtonians. And I would like for us to take a broader view of that philosophy and take a look at the investments we have made as a state in people for the last 4 years, really making sure that we're investing in early learning, making sure we're investing in behavioral health, making sure we're investing in the working families tax credit. A lot of these programs where we're helping people actually in the long run end up putting more money into their pockets. The work we've done with the Poverty Reduction Task Force, really making sure we have a plan towards self-sufficiency and wealth generation. A lot of these policies, a lot of these bills are about making sure that we are making Washingtonians more economically independent.
Great. Next, we'll go to Joe Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Joe, go right ahead.
Hello, for the senators, curious to get your thoughts on the announcement by Senator Ruben Carlisle that he won't run for election, and for the House members too, if they have anything to say.
I'll just say I was surprised when I heard it, but I do want to thank him for his years of public service. He has been such a leader in environmental issues, in technology issues, and his expertise will be missed. But this is what we do as citizen legislators. A lot of us have other jobs, and many times we put those on hold in order to do this work. And so I really do want to thank him for his service, as well as Senator Fox, who earlier had also announced that he is no longer going to be running for re-election. And I really do wish them both the very best and really want to thank them for all the sacrifices they and their families have made in order to have them be in these positions.
And I will just say, Senator Carlisle is not done serving yet. He signed me up for a walking tour of North Aurora next Sunday. So I know he's going to be working hard all the way to the finish line. We've got a lot of work implementing the Climate Commitment Act this year ahead of us. And he's really committed to landing the plane there to get that job done. And as Senator Dingras said, the legacy he leaves behind, whether it's transparency in our tax code or the work in the environment, or really lifting up foster children and making sure that some of the most vulnerable in our state are taken care of, is a tremendous legacy. And I think all of us hope that when our turn comes to exit this capacity, exit this responsibility, that we will be able to look back with fondness at a great career like Senator Carlisle does.
Joe, do you have a follow?
Yeah, speaking of Senator Frocht, question for the House. He has a bill the last 2 years that would increase criminal penalties for harassment of election workers. There seems to be some hypothesis or wondering that it was potentially not making headway in the House just because of a broader discussion about what sort of punishments the legislature should be adding. So I'm curious if thinking has changed around that and if we'll see that bill move forward this year in the House.
I think Lori might have, or Speaker Jenkins might have dropped off. I'll just say that, Joe, we're still working on House bills and trying to get through and get a handle on all the bills that have been introduced in the House. And so, it's hard to say at this point, what will be the fate of the Senate bill, but certainly Senator Frocht will work hard on getting it through the House process as well, and look forward to working with them.
Yeah, and I just would add, I expect it'll probably be heard in probably the state government committee. Maybe it's in public safety. We'll see, but let's see how the hearing goes. And as Pat said, or as Rep. Sullivan said, we're primarily working on House bills right now, exclusively, actually.
All right, thanks, Joe. Next, we'll go to Laurel Demkovich with the Spokesman Review. Laurel, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question about kind of addressing the nursing and healthcare shortage. Hoping to hear from someone in either chamber on this. The governor's proposed, I think it's at least like $17 million to deal with nursing and education, But the State Hospital Association has said they want something bigger, looking to New York's idea to, I think, invest about $10 billion into bonuses and education and things like that. So I'm just wondering, I know it's early in the budget process, but what kind of investment are you all hoping to see this year in terms of addressing healthcare and nursing shortages, and kind of what do you think is needed?
Well, I'll let Rep. Sullivan talk a little bit about what they're doing on budget, but I would just note that, like, everything that you've mentioned, Laurel, is good work to do, creating more slots, creating more nursing slots. Although when you look, one of the challenges to creating those is there's a shortage of people to teach in those. So we have kind of a circular challenge here. You know, when you have a shortage nationally, signing bonuses work for a short period of time, but they don't work for the long period of time, because then somebody else always has a signing bonus. I think I'm very favorable to looking at our licensing requirements right now, and both education and testing requirements, but also in both the behavioral health field and in the nursing field, we have a lot of requirements for practical experience, a lot of hours required, that there isn't a lot of data to support those high levels of hours. And that might actually get us more practitioners, maybe with some sort of supervision or something like that. That might get us more practitioners more quickly than opening more slots in the educational field. Again, not that I'm arguing against that. It's just that that produces more people in the next 5 years, but we need them now. So we need to figure out both long-term solutions and short-term solutions that get the public the service and the care that they need from frontline healthcare workers who have just been doing incredible work over the last couple of years.
I'll just add from the budget side that, you know, much of what Speaker Jenkins talked about is the immediate relief for hospitals to try to get more nurses into the system today. Much of what the governor invested in were things that were more long-term, in our education programs, at our CTCs, at our higher ed institutions, and actually in our K-12 system as well. You know, simulation labs, those tools that will be helpful in providing future nurses. But the speaker indicated, you know, another tact was to really work on the immediacy of getting nurses into the field.
And I'll just add, I'm glad you mentioned nurses and healthcare workers, because, you know, as we know, our nurses have been working tirelessly for a few years now. This shortage is all across the healthcare field, and especially behavioral health. So we had such record investments in behavioral health last session, and unfortunately, a lot of those we haven't been able to see fulfilled because of a lack of workers. And so there are quite a few bills, both in the House and the Senate this year, that are really taking a holistic look at that. I'm very excited about Senator Trudeau's bill that actually adds a credentialing at the bachelor's level. It's a program that's based out of the UK for a behavioral health support specialist that UW already has curriculum for, taking a look at other bills that take a look at using, having other people do administrative work instead of having our healthcare providers do that administrative work. And so really making sure we're taking a look at engaging peers, taking a look at credentialing, taking a look at what opportunities there are while people are waiting for paperwork to be completed, that they can start doing work in the field. So this is an area where I think any ideas from all over are definitely welcomed. And we saw, especially in the Behavioral Health Subcommittee, we had work sessions on this topic, we have bills on this topic, and I know the same is true in the House as well. So I think everyone is working together to see whatever solutions we can find. But the issue really is, this is not, unfortunately, only a Washington issue. This is an issue that we're seeing all across the country.
Laurel, do you have a follow?
I'm okay for now, thanks.
Okay, great. Next, we will go to Hanna Scott with Kyle Radio. Hannah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I think I'm going to start with Senator Dhingra. Senator Dhingra, this morning there was a hearing about a bill in your committee on law and justice regarding creating a misdemeanor and felony crimes for fake vaccination cards. I just wanted to, you said a little bit at the end of that hearing, I would like to hear a little more about what you thought and about some of the concerns that were raised during that hearing.
Thank you for that. Yes, this was a bill that is sponsored by Senator Solomon, and it is based on a bill that I believe passed the New York legislature. And what it basically says that if anyone intentionally creates fake COVID vaccination cards, that they should be held criminally liable. So I know a lot of the conversation during the hearing focused on the vaccine mandate and COVID, but the question really is, what do you do when someone falsifies a document? So when you take a look at it in terms of that, it really is about falsification of a document. So we did have some interesting dialogue in the committee, and we will see what the future of that bill is.
Anna, do you have a follow?
I do, and I probably would start with Senator Dingra on this again. This has to do with the State Attorney General's opinion that came out late on Friday regarding the police reform laws that were passed last session. Specifically, I think he's addressing force and Terry stops and ITA calls. Senator Dingra, if you've had a chance to read it, it is really strongly urging lawmakers to clarify the intent surrounding those specific things, which I know is being worked on, but there's so much uncertainty, and it seemed that police were right about not responding to some calls. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So, again, this was an issue that Washington State led the nation in when we're talking about police accountability. And this is something where I want to remind everyone that with the murder of George Floyd, we had suburban cities like the ones I represent, city of Duval, Woodinville, Redmond, Kirkland, that were asking for police accountability. So this is definitely something that Washingtonians want us to make sure we're leading on. As with all legislation, you always have to make sure that you are tweaking it as needed to make sure it has the intended impact. And this is no different. I was very pleased to see the hearings in the House on Rep. Johnson's bill, and I'm calling it the community caretaking bill, which really talks about the ITA calls, the community caretaking function that our law enforcement officers go out on, making sure we're being very clear that we do expect them to do that, and making that area very, very clear. And that had good bipartisan support. I am very happy to hopefully have that over from the House to the Senate shortly. The other House bill is one that Representative Goodman is working on, and that talks about the use of force and the Terry stops. And again, it's finding that right balance. And what we had is not just these bills, but you have to take a look at the totality of the bills that we have passed. And so a lot of the accountability will come in also from other bills. So this is absolutely something that I know that members both in the House and the Senate are interested in making sure we provide that clarity. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we will get there to make sure that clarity is provided for law enforcement.
Great, thanks. Next, we will go to Melissa Santos from Crosscut. Melissa, go ahead.
Hi there. My question also was about the AGO opinion. Well, specifically, I know that several lawmakers said that they thought that the use of force bill and the other tactics bill didn't really preclude an officer from stopping someone and then detaining them or arresting them if they tried to run. Like you could use it as obstruction. I think I even talked to you, Senator Dingra, about that. This opinion really says that's not okay, is at least what I read from that, that you can't use physical force to detain someone in for investigatory detention. And I believe one of the newer Representative Goodman bills addresses that. But I would like to hear from Senator Dingra and also from, I guess, the House Speaker, perhaps someone from the House on this. Is that something you're supportive of changing, sort of making it so you can stop people again based on, reasonable suspicion and do those, I guess those are Terry stops, I think. What sort of is the disconnect there? Because that definitely is a change from what I heard lawmakers saying last year.
Yes, that is a lot in one question, Melissa. And we may have to have a longer conversation about this than the time we have right now. So, what is force? Of course, is something that is hard to define. And this is where the Attorney General's office basically, comes down and saying that, if it is the force you need in order to put handcuffs of someone, on someone, that is force. Now, there is also the definition of force that people are trained upon. Is it enough force to overcome resistance to an arrest, or is it simply the act of taking someone's arm and putting it behind their back? So we do have force that they are trained upon versus the force that was identified in the Attorney General's office's opinion. And so I think that's why it's so imperative that we make sure we have some kind of clarification regarding the force that we're talking about. If as the Attorney General's opinion says, it's that effect of just going hands-on, that is force, that is different than the interpretation that many of us have and the conversations you and I have had. And so I think this is why it's important we have those bills, and I know Rep. Goodman's new bill is going to attempt to take a look at that. But in light of that opinion, we really do have to make sure that we are being consistent with the training law enforcement is getting at the CJTC on what the use of force means. And it really, in my opinion, is closer to what force you need to use in order to overcome resistance, not simply being in the act of putting handcuffs on an individual who may be cooperating with the arrest.
For the dog, shush. Okay, yeah, Speaker Jenkins, do you have some thoughts on sort of where we need to go after this AG opinion with the bills with the use of force situation?
Well, I mean, I've only had a cursory review of the AG's opinion, but as I looked at it in a really cursory review, one of the things I'm very pleased about is that the House we're considering legislation right now on every single topic discussed in that AGO opinion. And that is because I think we realize that there were unintended outcomes from the bills passed last year. And as Senator Dingra said, trying to achieve the right balance is important to us. I think the most recent bill that Rep. Goodman filed, I think early last week, it defines force. It also talks about sets kind of a Ninth Circuit federal court decision standard around when someone is fleeing law enforcement and the ability to use force to stop someone from fleeing under any circumstance. So I think that is definitely something that's been recognized by the folks who are leading on this and many of the other issues that were noted in the AG's opinion. So I think we're going to be able to hopefully move any number of those bills over to the Senate, and hopefully we'll get them to the governor. As you can tell from the technical nature of Senator Dingra's response and some of mine, she's a lot more technically proficient at this than I am, but these bills are highly technical. Small words make big differences. So I would imagine we are going to be discussing these deeply at every point along the legislative process.
Melissa, are you all set?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Great. Next, we'll go to Drew Mikkelsen with King 5. Drew, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time. I want to start with a specific question for the speaker and then a question for the room. Speaker Jenkins, can I hear what you think about the sales tax cut bill? That didn't sound like it had a lot of enthusiasm in the room. Is that bill dead in your opinion?
Well, one, it's a Senate bill, so it's not a House bill. Drew, so we're really paying attention to House legislation right now. But I would just say there's a whole bunch of proposals out there, and we're going to look at all of the proposals. I think one of the big distinctions between the proposals is we have a lot more one-time money that we can invest in Washingtonians than we do ongoing dollars. So an ongoing year-over-year bill like that which Senator Doss has proposed is probably more challenging than something like the bill that Rep. Paul proposed and Reps Paul and Rule proposed, which is a sales tax holiday, one-time limited period of time, but still giving Washingtonians the opportunity to get a sales tax break for they buy that are less than $1,000. So I say all that, but in the end, the fact of the matter is we're going to look at all of these and see what works best in the budget situation that we're in.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask about the Lorraine Loomis Act. Farmers pushed back pretty hard, saying it was going to put their businesses out of business. Does that need to be changed? Was that response a surprise to you? We'll start with you, Speaker.
Well, I mean, I'm not well versed in every single bill that of the 2000 that the House is considering right now. So I wouldn't say I was surprised necessarily, but I will tell you that I have talked with both members on the committee. I have talked to the Agricultural Committee, the tribal community. They've all raised interests in the legislation, and I think there's a strong commitment to try and see what portions of that bill can be moved forward this year. Maybe not as was heard, but there are many very good elements in the bill that would set us up for success in terms of salmon recovery. And so I know that folks are going to try to work with the governor's office to move pieces of it forward. Again, it may not be the same bill that was heard in committee, but that's what committee hearings are all about, right?
And Drew, you're all set?
I am. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Jerry, go ahead. Like we may have lost Jerry. We'll skip to Austin. Austin Jenkins, go ahead.
Here.
Oh,
There's Jerry. Do you want to jump in, Jerry? Oh, I just wondered about the long-term care. First, what day the vote will be on the Senate floor, and when do you hope to get to the governor?
Thank you. The Ways and Means Committee is going to hear it today. And, we're very hopeful that given the strong bipartisan support in the House, that hearing will go through very well, and that we can set it for exec and hopefully hear it on the floor later this week and get it to the governor as soon thereafter. So that's the plan.
Jerry, have a follow?
There's a couple of approaches to gun laws this session. The House has on restrictions on open carry. House has one, the Senate has a different version. I'm just wondering, Democrats looking to restrict open carry again. Is it time to end open carry in Washington? And if not, why not?
So I'll start off by saying that one of the things that became very, very apparent, and I mentioned the Black Lives Matter movements and the marches that happened a couple of years ago, was really that the use of these weapons as a method of intimidation. And so the open carry bills that you saw last session and the ones that you're seeing this session are very much tied to that component of that these bills are used to intimidate others. And that is what we're seeing. I am not aware of any bill that outright bans open carry, but it really is critical that we are not allowing a small minority of individuals to use their weapons in a manner that threaten to silence others. And that is what you're seeing here. And I haven't spoken to anyone who has told me that they would like to ban open carry outright.
Okay, next we'll go to Austin Jenkins. Austin, go ahead. Austin, you're up. You hear me?
Yeah, I was trying to talk to you, but
sorry.
There's like three things I have to hit here to make it work on my end. Sorry. Another question for Senator Dingra regarding two bills that are on tap for public hearing on Friday. One is the emergency powers reform measure, I think from Senator Randall, and then the, the governor request legislation that Senator Frocht is sponsoring around criminalizing false statements having to do with election results if they result in some sort of act of, I can't remember the term they use. It's not violence, but some,
inciting
right.
violence.
Can you just kind of give us a pulse check on the level of kind of interest and openness and appetite for both of these measures at this point?
Thank you. I will take the second one first, just because you mentioned that last. And so this really is a bill that is taking a very narrow look at the First Amendment rights of individuals, the intentionality between specifically using false statements, and the consequence that that has in terms of inciting a riot. And to me, this is frankly very much about making sure that we are protecting our democracy. You know, there's no greater threat to a democracy than misinformation that is used to incite violence. And we unfortunately saw that in the United States all last year. And so from a constitutional perspective, I do believe that this is written to be very specific about the consequences of the intentional use of misinformation. I think it'll be very telling what happens in the public hearing, but I do think it is a well-crafted piece of legislation. The second part of your question was in terms of Senator Randall's bill about emergency powers. You know, I feel like I've said this all last year, that we're in unprecedented times, and I think this is what this bill is about. We have seen this, the governor's use of emergency powers in a way none of us ever anticipated or saw. And as with all things that happen, we have to learn from experience. We have to always make sure we are protecting our institutions of democracy, that we are taking lessons learned and making sure that we are frankly, bolstering up all components of our government. And I think Senator Randall's bill is one that does that. So I am eager to see what the public hearing again looks like. But I do think both of these bills are really written to make sure that we can take pride in our democracy, making sure that we're taking a look at checks and balances, and really making sure that we can instill trust in people that democracy is something we're all committed to. And we have to make sure that that is what continues to happen in this country.
And just building on Senator Dinger's answer, I think what we've seen with the governor's response in this pandemic has been incredibly successful. Washington has half as many casualties per capita from COVID-19 as we see across the country. So I don't believe any of this discussion is a reflection on the pandemic. It's a reflection on the balance of powers, on our Constitution, and on the ways that we move forward. But I think we all salute the governor's leadership through a very difficult time, keeping Washingtonians safe. And I think we're all with him that we need folks to get their boosters if they haven't done that yet, to continue to wear masks and maintain social distancing until we get through the end of this. But this is an appropriate time to look forward as well.
And I'll just add, we have lost more than 10,000 Washingtonians to COVID-19. 10,000. And when you compare those numbers to the rest of the country, Washington really is doing a stellar job. And I couldn't ask for a better leader to navigate us through the COVID crisis than who we currently have.
Austin, do you have a follow-up?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next and finally, we will go to Jeff Pohjola with Coma Radio. Jeff, go ahead.
Yes, my question is about this Bob Hasagawa bill that he put forward last week in terms of allowing a local income tax with the idea that other taxes would be cut to keep things in balance. Senate Republican leaders have essentially said this is a no-go. What's the appetite for it amongst the Democratic caucus? I know we didn't hear a whole lot on Friday when there was first discussion about it. And would you go alone without any bipartisan support?
So I'll just say, you know, there's been a lot of work being done in taking a look at our tax structure. We've had the tax structure group that have been doing public hearings and hearing from Washingtonians all across the state. I think it is well recognized at this point in time that we do have one of the most regressive tax structures in the country. And, you know, this is in line with some of the other bills that we have talked about, where a lot of members, you know, are really interested in making sure we can put more dollars into the hands of our low and middle class individuals. And I think this is just one more attempt. But there has been a formal process for taking a look at our tax restructure. And I think it is imperative that we continue to have these conversations on who is paying, how much are they paying, and is that really fair?
Jeff, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess the argument from the Republican side has always been that it is unconstitutional. The courts obviously haven't ruled on this particular bill, but I guess how much are you going to push? How much capital are you going to spend on something like this? And would you put forward a constitutional amendment if need be?
I'll just say it's a short session.
Can I just say something here? Like, listen, Jeff, if the Republicans argue that it's unconstitutional, then why do they keep on trying to make political points on this? It's just a little bit wacky, if you ask me. It is true that our state Supreme Court, really it was almost 100 years ago now, 90 years ago almost, ruled an income tax unconstitutional, yet the Republicans still keep on trying to make big deals of it every single time an individual member files a bill or something like that. This is political theater, not real discussion about policy, and that's what I'm interested in.
All right. And on that, we're over time, folks. So we will bid you farewell and thank you for joining us. And we will see all of you next week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.